Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast. I'm JT and I'm the funny one.
I'm Joey and I'm the serious guy.
That's how it goes around here, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, it's not
Tie
true.
my shoelace.
It's not true at all. But today we're discussing something which is an interesting topic. BJJ belts and seniority. Is the hierarchy of belts a thing of the past? The game's changed, people. No-gi has revolutionized, or the modern no-gi game, or New Wave Jiu-Jitsu, has changed Jiu-Jitsu culture. And I feel that this is coming up a bit more.
That's what you think, bro.
Bro.
I just fucking got here to black belt. The hierarchy still exists.
I'm telling you, it doesn't
I'm bringing
matter.
it back.
Mate, whatever.
People need to respect the strap around my
You
waist.
are too attached.
Says the guy who's like, you guys can attest to this. Before I got my black belt, every episode was like, says the brown belt. Joey, I'm a black belt. Like, just reinforcing it every time.
Yeah.
Bitch, please.
Anything I can have over this guy, whatever. It's fine. You know how it is, guys. You've got an uppity sibling. They might be younger than you. Maybe they're your twin. It doesn't matter.
But taller.
Tiny little bit taller, possibly not as handsome, not as strong. And for whatever reason, people tend to like them more. Maybe they're just less edgy. You've got to keep it real. That's what it is. And so once you understand the dynamic, you'll feel me and you'll relate to me better. Otherwise, you can just keep liking Joey.
Guys, so the hierarchy piece.
Hierarchy, because it is interesting, because I believe there is value in going into a martial art. And even though they talk about this a bit, you might have someone who's a doctor or a lawyer, very high level profession, but they're a white belt.
Yeah.
And you've got a guy who's a street sweeper, he's a brown belt.
Yeah.
In this environment, this guy, for a lot of reasons, or girl, is superior, like in skills, experience, knowledge, everything. And for good reason. They've put the time in, they've done the work.
Yeah.
And
it's a
definitely,
meritocracy. Yes.
And if you work hard, provided you're in a good situation, you can get there. So it doesn't matter your financial background. So that's the democratization of hard work within jiu-jitsu. Being a lawyer is not open to everyone in society, but being a Matt Savage is.
Yeah.
Rich or poor. I think what I want to talk about here is that BJJ no-gi and BJJ gi, it's split. It's changed. And you've got people out there like we were talking about J-Rod of B Team, younger brother to A-Rod. He's a blue belt, allegedly, and he just won the ADCC trials.
Younger brother to Nicky Rod.
Nicky Rod, sorry. And
Is A-Rod tennis player?
No, A-Rod is a famous baseball player and now entrepreneur.
Oh, right on. Thanks for tuning in, A-Rod.
We appreciate you. So I think it's one of those things that you're seeing young guys come through in no-gi and just be like, what's a belt?
It's disrespectful.
It
Quite
is.
frankly,
It is.
fucking got a message for those kids. So before we go into this new generation and how that is changing things, talk to me about the hierarchy. Tell me how does it play out?
So
and why does it exist and what's good about it?
I didn't fully understand. I mean, coming from a traditional martial arts background, when I showed up to the training hall in Taekwondo, you had to bow on the way in. You had to bow and shake hands you had to bow to everyone senior to you. There's so much bowing. You get really good posterior chain muscles, like good mornings. But basically, when I came to jiu-jitsu, it was so informal. Brazilian jiu-jitsu struck me as informal. But when I trained in Brazil, it wasn't. You did have to shake everyone's hand. And, if a higher belt called you to roll, you do that. You can't call a higher belt to roll.
Right.
That is a real serious thing. If a higher belt rolls into you and kicks your face off, you take it well and you move out the way, because whatever the higher belt's doing is more important than whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And wrongly or rightly, this is how it's structured.
The rules of the hierarchy.
Yeah, and so when you're lower on the totem pole, you don't like it. You're like, that sucks. Why do they get the special treatment? But then when you've committed 10 years of your life to something, you're like, well, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah, I don't think you go that this sucks. You're like, I can't wait till I'm there. That's really.
Can't wait till I'm the boss.
Yeah, I can't wait till I can kick motherfuckers in the face and not be reprimanded for it. I think that's kind of how it works, and that's fine, right?
Maybe
because it's aspirational. You're like, wow, I won't always be a Scummy white belt.
No. And
Respect to the white belts.
not at all. You are fodder. No. You're not a real person till you get a blue belt, really. And then you might retire. But we'll see. It's a war of attrition. We'll see how many of you stick around. But in truth, when you are a white belt, you think what you're doing is important. As part of the context of jiu-jitsu, you are important because one day you will be a black belt. But in that moment, you are not. You're just trying to get a part of this thing. And it's really important to realize that you're within a context. It's hard for you to impress your ego or your status on that situation because in this context, you are not important. And that's okay. That is part of the humility of jiu-jitsu. And I think that's the thing that I've loved about jiu-jitsu is the level of humility that I've had to learn at least. Doesn't matter what I did before. I suck at this. I got to get better. And that's cool. I have actually seen in other spheres of martial arts, striking particularly, way more arrogance. Like, oh yeah, but I teep that guy, or I kick that guy in the head. Yeah, I'm better than him. No, you're not really. You've only done a thing for a short period of time. And I guess it's out of context, but if we think about the apprenticeships, back in the day, not even modern apprenticeships in a trade, if you wanted to be a sculptor or a builder, you had to apprentice under some master for years and years and years before you could kind of go out on your own. Mm-hmm. And there's great value in that because there's so many nuanced things that you can learn. And generally, someone who's superior than you or higher on the totem pole will be more willing to show things to you if you're not, a stuck-up kind of I-know-it-all type person. And generally, as far as learning goes, people do better when they can be open and receptive to learning. Not like, yeah, I know what this is.
Yeah.
Yeah. My brother does MMA. I do UFC. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. So I guess there's there's an upside and a downside to anything, but very much so to the hierarchy piece, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think from that perspective of you walk out of society and into a training room and the way in which the hierarchy is measured has changed. I think that's very important. I remember listening to a movie director, Francis Ford Coppola, who directed Apocalypse Now.
Yes.
And it was him talking about making that film, but he said he was talking about film sets, and he's like, the film set is the last of the great hierarchies.
Right.
He said it still exists in military, he said, and film sets.
Right.
And and he was talking about the benefits of it and just how it is simplistic in nature. It's top down. Everyone knows where they sit. That then means you know how to act. It gives people structure. It's like there's no choices here. You do what white belts do. You do what do what brown belts do, etc. And in that direction gives people, or with those parameters, gives people makes things simple for them.
They don't have to make decisions.
That's right.
They're being told what to do.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're the leader. Tell me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And which we don't necessarily have in life. Anyway, that point could be debated, but
there's value in that.
There is, and I think in martial arts, like it makes things simple. It makes it easy to control the training space. It makes it easy to direct the intention of the student because, like, well, this is where you're at, so this is what you focus on.
Definitely.
You just keep grinding. You shouldn't be making those mistakes anymore, etc. But then there's also that side of it, which you could argue is like an abuse of it.
Yeah.
So there's a good side to, like, hey, if a higher belt asks you to roll, you got to roll with them.
Sure.
There's a good side to that.
There's some learnings.
There's also a downside.
Oh, yeah.
It opens itself like very much. It's like any kind of inequality opens itself up to potential abuse, doesn't it?
And abuse of power has been probably the biggest thing. Probably not that it hasn't been going on for years, but in recent times, probably the last 2 years, we think about social media and what's going on.
It's come to light.
It's really come to light.
That's right.
About this, and also this idea of black belt entitlement.
Yeah.
Just because you've got your black belt, as much as you put in a lot of hard work, it doesn't give you an excuse to be a bad human. You're not going to...
No, that's right.
You can't just be, you can't look at someone and go, you're a white belt, you're not important, because that person still has value and that, they bring what they bring to the gym, which can be very valuable. And then also it's the idea that culture, if it's dictated at the top and does filter down, if you've got all douchebags at the top, are you just have you got an academy for douchebags? Or
That's right.
how does it go?
Yeah, if they're dictating the culture, that's not cool.
No. And I think the reason why I wanted to bring this up is someone was saying to me the other day, like, oh, belts aren't important, skills are. Because you get people who maybe they're new to jiu-jitsu, but they're very athletic, or they're a very quick learner, or they've got a great strategy, and they start smoking experienced, really good people. And then people start to go, oh my goodness, what's going on here? And that's where I was going to talk about, the new move, the new wave, no-gi jiu-jitsu. So you got, look, I think I'm not big on this. Obviously, it's good to acknowledge people's rank. But for example, in 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, they give belts, but they don't wear gis.
Yeah.
What?
So they give a belt at the grading.
You get awarded a belt.
You wear it, you put it on.
Yeah.
And then you don't bring it to training again.
Yeah, and then you go put it in the cupboard.
Right. Yep.
Sure. And I think it's good to acknowledge people's achievements, but it's like, why wouldn't you just give them rashies? You're never going to wear a belt.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's a bit naff. But then there's people out there who, like J-Rod of B Team has come out as a blue belt. Now,
12-year-old blue belt.
Dude. So people are like, oh, he's only trained for a year and a half. That's bullshit. He's been wrestling his brother forever. His brother's a wrestler. He's wrestled. It's not like this guy just
it's
discovered
not like he's never
grappling
grappled before.
No.
Absolutely.
This guy can grapple, and his older brother has probably beaten him up and bullied him forever.
Yeah.
He's had to deal with that his whole life. So even though officially he's only trained jiu-jitsu a year and a half, he's been on the mats. He's been working his ass off.
Yeah.
And he trains with the best guys in the world. So to me, it's not surprising that he can come into a no-gi tournament and do really well. But he's not just doing really well. He's beating black belts.
Yeah.
Like
submitting them.
He won the ADCC. Like I think he beat Tackett Jiu-Jitsu in the final, and he's one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
So you just go, whoa, my goodness. Young guys.
Yeah, quite amazing.
And women too. Like if we're looking at 10th Planet as a system, combat jiu-jitsu, no-gi jiu-jitsu is popular.
Yeah.
And some of these new players in the game they're messing the game up.
To give a bit of context for maybe those who are a bit newer to the jiu-jitsu game, the way that it probably is at your academy, because it's still like this in the majority of gyms.
For most people.
And the way that it's been since the beginning of my take of 14 years of jiu-jitsu was that within the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we train both the gi and we do no gi. And the first gym that I trained at, we would do gi for 3/4 of the year, and then in summer we would just do no gi.
Oh,
because
nice.
the summer New South Wales, or the summer Australian Federation comps were no gi.
Yeah.
So I was like, we do 9 months of that and then 3 months of that. And then, now it's kind of morphed a bit where most academies will do, we do a couple of no-gi session on these days and then the rest of the days are gi. And there's probably more of a bias towards the gi, generally speaking.
Mm.
Now, because of that, it was always just considered that if you do jiu-jitsu, you do both.
Yes.
And that's just how it is. And you got a gi and you got a belt and you do a bit of no-gi as well. And I know, say, for Adam at Alliance, he's like, he values it very highly. He's like, I won't grade you unless you train both with me. You can't just come to one or the other.
Sure.
Excellent. Strongly agree. What we've seen, though, in recent times has been this evolution of strict no-gi gyms.
Yeah.
That go, you know what? We're not doing any gi stuff. We're just doing no-gi. And this has given rise to an explosion of no-gi jiu-jitsu technique, new competitions, very exciting sport, to the point where it's now its own sport.
Yeah.
You've got these no-gi comps. They're like, we don't care what belt you are, like toss you in the fire. It gives an opportunity of a blue belt to be able to grapple against a black belt. But at the end of the day, they're kind of moved, like, because that sport is now so specialized, it's almost moved away from the belt. The belts are relevant because that's from another sport.
Yes.
It's like, I'm a no-gi guy and this is my skill set.
No-gi submission grappling.
Yeah.
And when you look at what they're doing with the ADCC, every year they're trying to make it bigger and bigger. And this year is by far the biggest in terms of how many people entered the selectives in the States and how intense that was to get in.
Fucking sick matches.
Oh, amazing. Some of the best matches you'll ever see.
You can see a cool highlight on Flow. There's a Flow Grab did a highlight. You don't have to pay for it.
No, but then also let's look at the rise of flow grappling, right? They are trying to be the ESPN of non-conventional sports.
Yeah.
And they've really, they cover everything: flow wrestling, flow grappling, flow judo. And the thing about it is this: back in the day, you would basically try to cultivate a game which applied gi and no gi.
Yeah.
But that's just not how it is now.
You can't get good enough.
No, if you really aspire to be exceptionally good, you have to choose. Now, if you're like, oh, I do a bit of both and that's cool, no problem at all. But the interesting thing, and I think it probably speaks a little bit more to the personalities of people who are championing the way of the no-gi, if we're looking at guys like Gordon Ryan or Craig Jones or even Eddie Bravo himself, these guys are kind of contrarian. They're like, yeah, we're kind of against the system.
Yeah.
Even though Eddie's very proud to have been graded under the Machados and always shows his lineage, these guys don't care. They don't want to, they don't want to pay dues to anyone really. They're just like, no, we're good at this. We do our thing and fuck whoever else, And so there's a very kind of rebels of the underground type vibe that we do grappling, which is cooler than what those guys in the pajamas do. And look, I mean, I'm not saying that is the case. I believe there is great value in both. But it is challenging this mainstream idea of this seniority of the old guard, bowing, us, the whole structure.
Can't ask higher belts to roll. Got to say yes to a high, all that stuff.
Yeah,
it's like, bitch, this is a no-gi class.
It's out
We're
the
getting
door.
after
We
it.
throw down. It's just get after it.
I don't even give a fuck what belt you have.
Yeah. Can you roll?
Yeah.
Are you good? Are you tough? That's it.
It's not, are we doing heel hooks? Yeah, we're definitely doing
You
heel
better
hooks.
believe it. Yeah. You just tap quickly,
Yeah.
okay?
But that's exactly right. And I think there's like within that, and I can speak to this personally, there's always like for the old guard, it's always grinding this transition because you're like, fuck, I'm not ready for this. I was used to the old system.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not ready to face that. And that's a reality. It's like, yeah, you have to either adapt or you have to choose to sit out or, stick to your own party. Like,
yeah.
But you can't like, I think I don't know if there's actually anyone that's like really, truly defending it. Like, I don't know if there's any jiu-jitsu proponents out there who are hanging shit on no-gi stuff. I think everyone loves it.
Definitely. But I know what I'd say is that people who are within more the traditional realm will say, oh, well, we do self-defense. This is the origins.
Yeah.
We're not doing that spinny on the ground nonsense. Like, no, we do real street defense BJJ. It's like, oh, look, yeah, okay, cool. You got to pick your niche, right? People are still trying to make money off their heritage, their culture. I'm not hating on that. But that said, there's plenty of like world star videos of some kids trying to punch him and heel hook him. So punch him and stomp him, and he pulls out a heel hook. It's like, bro, you're wearing Jordans. You're definitely getting heel hooked.
Yeah.
Like some skinny dude's like, he's done a bit of jiu-jitsu. He's done a bit of leg locks. Like, I think what we're seeing is some of these moves that were reserved, like within gi jiu-jitsu for the longest time, footlocks were considered, oh, that's dirty. That was like a very Gracie dogma.
Yeah.
Because my first coach was under Carlinhos Gracie. It's like, oh, we don't do footlocks. Nah. But interestingly enough, if you look at the lineages, like Fada, he taught the ghetto guys. He wasn't teaching the rich people in Rio. He was going to the favelas, and he taught footlocks. And they were really into it, and they were really freaking good at them, And so it's interesting.
That's why footlocks were talked down upon.
Yeah.
Because of the preeminent sort of community there in Brazil.
Yes.
Right.
It's
similar to the Japanese, Russian, like we're not attacking the legs anymore in judo.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
That kind of vibe. But it's interesting to see the comeback because it's so effective, and
fuck, absolutely.
Mate, I guess what we're looking at now is if you've got a really keen blue belt who knows leg locks and you're a slightly older black belt and you don't know leg locks, you might have a career-ending injury right there.
Yeah. And at the very least, you're probably going to have to tap a bunch of times in your roll.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Whereas
definitely.
in the gi, maybe you could just smash them up and no heel hooks allowed and you got a superior grip game and that whole thing. But yeah, I mean, I fucking speak to that. There's guys, there's blue belts, there's white belts at Alliance that put me in some fucking precarious positions. And I'm like, holy shit, I don't know what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, oh, well, I've been, studying the DVD for the last 6 months. And you're like, amazing.
Yeah.
That's the evolution. Either I go like, man, teach me how that works.
Yeah.
Or, whatever, I buy the DVD or I go find out.
Sure.
Or I go, nah, fuck that. I'm not rolling with that guy. And I try to defend my kind of like
current status.
Yeah. It's
position.
like, that's sort of that point I was making before where it's like a refusal to evolve.
And I think the way we can look at that is maybe more traditional martial arts. I had a text conversation with a very famous high-level karate guy. I think he was trying to recruit me to be a part of his organization or something. I was like, no, man.
Wonder boy.
Yeah, it was weird. It was cool, like whatever. And I was like, no, I'm more of a grappler. I spent a long time kicking and punching, but I'm not interested in that. I love grappling. He's like, oh, I'd have no idea about that. Like if I was on the ground, I'd be stuffed. And it's confronting if you've done something for 20 or 30 years and you think you're pretty handy. And then, well, what happens when you fall over on the ground? You should learn some of that stuff. In the same way, if you're out there, you're hearing this and you have no idea about leg locks, for your own safety, it's worthwhile to just understand, here's how it attacks, here's how you defend, just to expand the knowledge. So if some, frothy bloody, Anthony Golovkin just throws you in saddle and starts like heel hooking you, your knee doesn't explode.
Shit.
You know how to defend.
And the coach is watching. Fuck.
I don't want to tap. Yeah. But let's think about it. I'm sure there's plenty, and this is where we talk about this old school, new school thing. There's plenty of people out there who are like, oh, heel hooks aren't new. Heel hooks have been around for a while. But that's not how I play. That's not my game. I think the interesting thing about what we're looking at here is that if someone is an amazing grappler, does the belt matter? That is more the discussion. It's not, do you like leg locks or not? It's like someone's got a game that's messing you up. So on a competitive level, this person's tapping you because they have knowledge that you haven't touched on.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got,
or they've exposed a hole in your game.
In your knowledge.
Yeah.
Exploiting. So then is it, just because someone's competitively good, does that mean they're better than you? It doesn't mean that they outrank you, but I believe that what a lot of the new school guys are challenging is this idea that you have to do something for 10 years, you have to pay all this money, you have to go through this process when they feel they may have shortcut that system of efficiency.
Yeah.
That they are winning championships, beating people with a different way to approach learning and training.
Yes.
So this is the idea, is that is this an evolution on what grappling is?
And it's kind of similar to, like, if you look at, who am I thinking of here? I'm thinking of Tia Claire in CrossFit.
Sure.
And I don't know what she did, but I think she was a CrossFitter.
Well, she was,
and then she got real good at weightlifting.
No, she was an Olympic lifter before CrossFit.
Was she?
Yeah, 100%. You better believe it. She went to the Com Games.
Yeah, but I thought that came after CrossFit.
No, she did do it after. She did do it after CrossFit.
Yeah, right. But she had been weightlifting prior.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So say that, right? So she's like elite in this sport, and then also elite in this sport.
Yeah.
But then she also qualified for is it bobsled team?
She's doing bobsled now.
Yeah, Australian bobsled team.
Whoa.
And so you're like, so she's like on the Olympics.
She's a mega athlete.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, the thing that she did before gave her some capacity for the next thing that she did.
Yes.
And that gave some capacity for the next thing. And it's like, you got to respect that. But if you look at it in isolation, you're like, well, she became an Olympic level bobsledder with only 6 months of training. You're like, well, yeah, but she was also the best in the world across.
The fittest woman in the world. One of the strongest women in the world as well. Like,
that's right.
Yeah.
But so, in a sense, it's like when you're like, so say with that example of like looking at someone like a J-Rod, you're like, okay, let's say this kid's been training for a year and a half. You're like, has he actually has he come in fresh, no physical work? Hey, I want to learn about this sport and it's been a year and a half. Or are there some other clues, some other things in the past that have, built to this ability right now?
Yeah.
Second point on that, and this is just discussion points. This is not criticizing like his success at all.
No.
I think it's incredibly fucking exciting.
No, what they're doing is what
it's
they do
amazing.
at the B team is for sure the next step evolution on new wave jiu-jitsu.
Absolutely. But the other side of that is that jiu-jitsu being at that top level, being so reliant on having, well, actually challenge me on this. I could be wrong.
Sure.
But here's my thought. And I say I could be wrong because I'm thinking about maybe how J-Rod won his matches, and perhaps this isn't the case. But I think Keenan's touched on this. It's like you need to develop a unique skill set in jiu-jitsu that will allow you to beat everyone. But by the time you've been through that competition and everyone's seen your skill set, you now need to go and develop a new skill set.
That's what happened to him.
Because technically it evolves so fast.
Every time.
What's he doing? Oh, he's fucking
Worm
attacking the heel like this. Or what? Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah, right, yeah.
So then it becomes like an arms race for, well, who's got the flash system right now?
He's got the new thing.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't take you long to learn that new system. It's a timing piece, and I was in the right place, right time, and I was able to employ it against my opponents.
Definitely.
Versus, do you have a total understanding, well-rounded approach, understanding of the culture, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I believe for those people out there who are hard charging, just trying to be the best, and it doesn't matter, like get to the top quickest, being able to look at no-gi, it's a quicker path. Like if it is less technical to do no-gi in terms of that you don't have to defend as many things.
Yeah.
You don't have as many options to attack. So you just need to get really good at particular things.
Yeah.
You got to deal with so much more bullshit in the gi. That's what it comes down to.
75 different fucking guards.
But the friction.
Pass for every single one of them. Yeah.
And that's why it's so appetizing to new people. Like, I don't have this friction. I can move.
Yeah.
I don't need to be as technical.
Yeah, the playing field is leveled very quickly in no-gi.
Yeah, especially if you come in and you do have a background in physical sports, whether it be football or wrestling or powerlifting, anything. You're like, well, I don't have anything to be controlled by. I'm stomping these people, and that does matter. I think what is, and you used this word before, and it is a great word. You said, oftentimes it's conflated. This is where people bring two things together that are not related and say that it is. So really, people are looking at no-gi and kind of new wave, jiu-jitsu, leg lock.
When we say new wave, we're not actually referring to Danaher's
Sorry,
new
I'm
team.
sorry. Yeah.
Because they called that new wave, didn't they?
They are called,
We're
yes.
talking about the next generation.
We're talking about
the new
this
generation.
This current iteration, which is submission wrestling based, no-gi submission wrestling. And it's awesome. It's spectacular. It's so cool.
It is way more exciting than gi jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, people
I'll
going
buy
to
a
50,
ticket to that shit
50
any day of the week.
Yeah, like I've been to world championships and seen two of the greatest players of all time stall each other out for advantages.
Oh, wow.
You're like, God, really? You're going to win on an advantage?
Who was that?
It was Cobrinha and Huffer Mendes.
Wow.
Back in the day. It was a very close final.
Yeah.
I think Huffer might have won by 2 advantages or 2 points. It was very close. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was a time at which Huffer did armbar Cobrinha and he kind of ran away. But even like Bruno Malfacini versus one of the Miao brothers, it was it wasn't even an advantage. It was even, but they advantage for advantage, and then they just gave a decision to Bruno because he went mental.
Right.
And it's you're thinking to yourself, man, you work your whole life, and that's the epitome of what it is. Whereas maybe you're watching Cyborg versus Nicky Rod, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
You've just got this real athletic young guy just cartwheeling, jumping, and you've got a guy who is an ADCC absolute champion.
Yeah.
And he loses. Fuck. What's going on there?
Yeah.
Like, what's that about? Is it just sheer athleticism, or are they doing something different? And I feel that the pushback more recently has been that there have been some revelations about hierarchical abuse of power, and people being like, man, these black belts are just protecting themselves and each other, and that's not fair. And that's, it's like big companies protecting their own and committing atrocities and getting away with it. And then you've just got the new crew coming through.
Disruptors.
Saying, forget that.
Yeah.
And then doing amazing stuff and maybe refreshing the game and questioning, do you need to spend 10 years getting a belt, or can you just be really good, really young and mess the game up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a fucking wonderful thing. And one credit to Gordon Ryan is that he calls that out a lot. Like, he challenges that. He's like, fuck these old guys. Like, they're all trying to use the same game that they've used for the last 10 years and just sit on top of
Just milk it.
Yeah, stay on the podium kind of thing. And, you know, I mean, he was probably, unfortunately, I don't like his views on many other things.
No.
And I don't particularly seem to like the character of him. But I like the way he disrupted that game. And you could almost say he was one of the first dudes to really punch through on the no-gi thing and be like, I'm fucking taking over here.
Yes.
And that's now there's these other people following.
Yeah.
You know, which kind of similar to, you know, Conor McGregor.
Sure.
You know, and some of the people that have followed him in that model through the UFC. Again, not someone whose values I agree with wholeheartedly.
And I think this is the difficulty, because I believe there is huge value in putting on the gi, lining up, not the bowing thing, but just going through the process of a structure. Because so much of our life is chaotic and a lot of the power distribution is not earned. You know, like, the boss's son is now the manager.
Yeah.
And they're a terrible manager.
Yeah.
And they're always late and they're not particularly friendly or professional or anything. And you're a hardworking lady in your mid-30s and you know you could run that shit better. So why the fuck is the boss's son the manager? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Whereas at jiu-jitsu, you got that purple belt, you got that brown belt. That was earned. Like, you know, I think earlier in the piece, I think actually back in the day, it may have changed now. You used to be able to get a blue belt online.
Gracie University.
Yeah, man. They don't do it now, but
do they not?
God. Really? It's terrible.
That was quite special.
That was terrible. I'll call that out all day. You can make all the backpack jackets you want. That's some bullshit. Did you see that on Shark
hoodie,
Tank?
yeah.
Whatever, man. Like, they're good business guys, but whatever. That's nonsense. So this said, I personally believe that if you've never done martial arts, it is worthwhile to go through a process of being in a more structured environment. But when we look at the new paradigm, which is the just train a certain way, get good very quickly and be ultra competitive, the question is, does that trump? Or is it like horses for courses? If you're a, young athletic human, male or female, and you're like, I'm just chasing this thing and I don't care about belts, I just want to be a sick grappler, is that the option? Because there are plenty of examples of guys and girls who are exceptionally good in the gi and also in the no gi.
Yeah, that's right. You would say that they are the exceptional individuals that can still hang in both.
Yeah.
And it can be done.
It can be done.
But the big prediction from me would be that 5 years from now,
no,
won't be, right?
Even now, it's
there's only a few.
Very few.
Yeah.
And it's really I'm wondering if, and I had a conversation with old coach of mine, Dan Cherubin, saying he feels it'll swing back the other way, that the gi will start to get popular again because there is more creativity and more options for techniques there. So once the gi game evolves to the next level, whatever that next step is, then it will start to get a bit more exciting. And we've even seen, now the IBJJF is allowing reaping and heel hooks.
Ah, really?
Yeah, in no-gi.
No-gi, yeah.
Right? So
yeah, they're adapting.
So they were losing massive market share.
Yeah.
Because before they were dominating.
Yeah.
Then Grappling Industries came and Naga. And they're like all these other comps come and they're not making as much money and they have this strict rule set. Whereas Grappling Industries is like, we don't care.
Do what you
blue
want.
belt, heel hook each other. Kill each other. Good times.
Yeah.
And people are going there. So then it's like, okay, they're like, oh man, we got to include it. So now you got all these heel hookers coming in and then the guys who didn't keep up with the modern game are getting usurped. They're getting thrown off the throne. So I think if we can look at it, me personally, I feel like if you've just started jiu-jitsu, I wouldn't just throw it all out the door. I do think there is a fair bit to learning in the gi. Value.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm Huge fan of the gi. I think that the more formal side that can come with that, like the ceremonial aspect of putting on this uniform and training and that, like I think that can't be overstated as just a benefit of training jiu-jitsu. You obviously get a small amount of that with no gi, but it's much less because it is just more of a, hey, we're here, we're kind of, like the hierarchy, the hierarchy thing kind of doesn't exist, and it's just, I don't know, it's a more athletic endeavor.
It is. And I think of it kind of like styles of music. I think of the gi kind of like classical music or a more formal instrumental, like learning an instrument. Because when you put on the gi, it's connecting you to thousands of years of martial arts history. Like that's the kind of material that the samurais wore under their armor. Like that's how I like to think of it. I'm like, this is connecting me to the past. This is a cool thing that we're doing now. But then I think of no-gi kind of like punk music. Like it's kind of, like it's just alternative. Counterculture.
Yeah.
Maybe you're good at your instrument. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're singing. Maybe you're screaming. Doesn't matter.
I'm going to eat this glass bottle on stage.
Yeah, I got piercings. I'm cool. And, that's, I think that's
you hear that, Eddie Bravo?
That's been the appeal, the new world order of 10th Planet. But now it's even bigger than that. And it's much lighter on the laundry load. Just rocking the light.
Fucking that's absolutely true.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, guys. If you want some help with your training, you know that we got you. Bulletproof for BJJ.com. Go there. You can sign up for a free trial of our program. And in there, you will find all sorts of solutions for building a strong, athletic, and flexible body for jiu-jitsu. If you use the code BJJ Podcast, you'll get 20% off. And if you're not interested in doing our program, but you still want to support the show, you can find us on Patreon. We would really appreciate any support you're willing to give. And look, as always, if you've got suggestions for the show or anything you want to send through to us, hit us up, JT@bulletproofforbjj.com. He's the man that runs the podcast piece. So send through ideas or feedback and we'll take that on board because we love to hear what you guys want to hear more or less of.
Thank you.
Thanks, fam. Cheers, brah.
Peace.
See you next week.